I now call this episode to order. Hello, welcome to the Brewster Call, a voice of reason in a world of chaos. I'm your host, Jason. Today I'd like to speak a little bit about education. I'm a person who education has benefited me very greatly, but I had some interesting ideas for things to do with it. And so I wanted to sort of float them out publicly to see what people think, get some feedback, and maybe I've got something here, maybe I don't. So let's begin. I noticed that people speak about education and how there's trade schools and public schools. With public schools, it's very, book smart. And for a lot of people, that works. For me, that worked. I have a 4-year college degree, and honestly, it was a pretty enlightening experience. As someone who's a natural parliamentarian and academic at heart, it worked out for me. Now, the trade schools are, plumbing, electricians, carpentry, very hands-on practical skills. And honestly, that works for a lot of people too. In fact, I think there's many people who get sent off to college because of public pressure and you have to have a degree. But honestly, they would excel a lot more in trade schools and getting an education through there. But then it occurred to me that there are some careers that don't quite fit in one or the other. For example, I was at the town hall a few weeks ago, and I was there for a very particular purpose. I've been doing yard work in my house. The past 10 years, our yard has grown like Oriental bittersweet, I believe, an invasive species, and our yard line is just gone. And so I was there basically saying, hey, if I do this yard work, I don't want to accidentally open myself up for litigation and get into my neighbor's property line. How exactly would I know where the property lines are? And they say, well, you gotta go hire a surveyor. I'm like, all right. Surveyor, you say? Yeah, they're gonna run you about $2,000. $2,000? Are you kidding me? Come to find out, there aren't many surveyors to go around. Those are the people who draw the lines and sort of take a lay of the land. Apparently, because there are so few of them, and there's high demand and less supply, they can charge an arm and a leg. And that's totally fine because, how else are they going to get compensated fairly for their time? But at the same time, that's a huge opportunity. We can get more surveyors out there, and, because there's such a demand for them, a competent surveyor would be able to get quick work. Similarly, I think of stenography. Now, I mentioned this last week as shorthand for George B. Cortelyou. It was sort of cursive on steroids, but nowadays they have a steno keyboard. Now, quick sidebar, because I can't help myself. George B. Cortelyou being trained as as a classically trained pianist, and also being a stenographer, this man would have a field day with a modern steno keyboard. Anyways, stenography is one of those skills that also doesn't have a lot of people doing it, and yet it is very essential. Now, a lot of people will say, okay, artificial intelligence has taken that over, but I disagree on a few grounds. First off, artificial intelligence transcribing can't do very well with back and forth conversations if lawyers are interrupting clients, or in cross-examination, I want the truth, you can't handle the truth. Those sort of interruptions sometimes aren't as clear, and if there are people speaking over each other, a trained stenographer can get both at the same time. Secondly, some courtroom documents actually require, legally, that you have to have a human to certify it, and so artificial intelligence won't make the cut. But also, even if artificial intelligence would work in transcribing courtroom documents, there's many other jobs that steno can be implemented in, such as cart captioning, legislative reporters. It's a really actually slept on and underestimated job. And it's also very practical. You don't need to have a formal education necessarily to have stenography as a career. If you can pass a 220 word per minute jury charge and get certified as a stenographer, you can get like 75 grand right out of high school. And so, in particular with stenography and surveyorship, I'm thinking to myself, why don't we have a better pipeline for this? In particular with stenography, there is a program based out of Millbury, Massachusetts. They're a nonprofit called Project Steno, whose stated organizational goal is to get more stenographers. And so we could have an opportunity here, even with our own very school district, to pilot a stenography program. But then I thought about something else, is that there's many things that schooling could be better. I think about how to be a good citizen. I've heard so many people, I know that Massachusetts, I don't know when they did this, but I'm pretty sure that they got rid of the civics requirements, where it's an elective, it's entirely optional. But you don't have to learn civics to graduate. Similarly, I've heard so many complaints that I don't know how to do my taxes after high school. That's a pretty important thing to learn. And so what started as stenography and surveyorship sort of came into this interesting idea of a third type of education. You've got public schools, you've got trade schools, you've got civic schools. That's what I'm doing. Or that's what I am proposing, rather. And civic schools would not only teach people about how to do their taxes, civics out the wazoo, and rhetoric and debate. They would also teach about parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules of Order, the stuff that it takes to be a moderator, knowing, town meeting time, but in general, just parliamentary law. They would also teach about, for example, how to look up relevant statutes within Massachusetts general law, or wherever state you're in. Most states, they have transparency requirements where their law is searchable on a portal. You go to the Mass General Court website or Mass Legislator, you can search through the entire text of the Massachusetts general law. Now, I wouldn't recommend it because it is so long, but if there's a particular issue that comes up, may it be useful for somebody to know how to navigate through that? And so, this idea of civic education that I'm putting forth is almost like a middle ground between public schools and trade schools, because you have the academia, you have the history and the Robert's Rules and the civics, but then you also have very tangible practical skills, like searching up law books, or searching the Mass General Law portal, being able to evaluate your legislators and go on the website and sort of see how they vote on particular issues. Again, Robert's Rules of Order is something that is both educational and practical. And so there are many aspects of town governance, town administration, as well as, in general, just governance at large, that really aren't being taught about unless you go get a master's in public education. I would think to facilitate opportunities to be engaged and active citizens, that something of what I'm proposing may be useful. And again, in the cases of stenography and surveyorship, also profitable. With steno, you get 75Ks right off the bat. I'm surprised more people aren't connecting the dots like this. But I'm putting this idea sort of out there into the stratosphere in sincere hopes that somebody else will pick it up. I'm a man who wears many hats, for there are more hats than people willing to wear them. So I can't do everything. But education is one of those things that is essential to our youth, essential to our future. Those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it, and those who do not know how to be a good citizen, God help them. Point being is that in years past, other institutions, the Knights of Columbus, the Exchange Club, civic organizations were a lot more omnipresent. They'd be in parades, they'd be all over the town. And I'm not saying that they're not now. Don't get me wrong, like, I know they're still in existence, but it was sort of baked into the fabric of society of, like, you participate in civics, this is how you be a good citizen. And so when I think about all of that, it's sort of a conundrum. I was speaking to my stepfather the other day about citizenship, and he gave an interesting example how all of the mafiosos, all the people engaged in organized crime, if you go through that list, many of them served with distinction in World War II. And he made the point, even the bottom of the barrel, even the people who were organized criminals still participated in our governance, in foreign wars, and did their duty. But then, as we continued talking, he realized, I can't actually tell you what it is to be a good citizen. I can give you examples of what good citizenship is, but I can't... how do you define it? And I think it lacks a clear, succinct definition because it is not something that you talk about, it's something that you do. And so, something needs to be there to provide those good opportunities, to get more involved, to not just like activism and politics, but more in general, just to be as a community center, to participate in service projects, volunteer. I mean, I can think of people in my generation, and as far as I know, I'm sort of an outlier here in that these are things that I actively care about. And I put that in the fact that, I'm an Eagle Scout and I was sort of brought into it. So I was lucky. That shouldn't have to be luck. That should be just the common all over the place. We shouldn't have to have something to define citizenship, because it should be kind of like what we are. And hear me out, I'm not talking about like Supreme Court, I'm not weighing in about birthright citizenship. I'm talking about, if you're a citizen, what does that look like? What does that entail? What is the civic virtues that encompass who we are as a people? What actions does that look like? I, for one, am still thinking about those things, and will continue to do so all throughout my life. You see, education isn't the end-all be-all. It is one of many paths. I think that the joy of learning is something that will continue to be a joy. The pursuit of wisdom, honestly, is that's how I'd phrase it. The pursuit of wisdom is one of the greatest joys in my life. Whether it be listening to a podcast, an audiobook, reading, I'm humble in the fact that there is so much out there that I do not know. And yet, that excites me, because that means that there's so much out there that I do not know. I want to learn. I want to be a better individual. These are the type of questions I implore everyone else to ask. It may look different for different people. How people show up and engage. For some people, that's, get involved in elections and partisanship. For other people, it's starting a charitable nonprofit. I think it's very important that we each find our way, our own path to do that, but that there is a path. That we don't just sit on our couches and not participate. That we don't complain how things are wrong with society and yet do nothing to change them. If there is an issue that you see, it is your solemn duty to get up off the couch and do something about it. Whatever that looks like to you. And frankly, if you are complaining that something is wrong and then you're not doing anything about it, I feel like you've lost your right to complain. Or at least, I wouldn't take your complaints as seriously. Because every complaint is an opportunity. Every gripe, we have a right to petition our government for a redress of grievances. And so if there is a complaint, I'm not viewing that as I'm, rabble-rousing, yada yada. It's like, okay, If there's a serious problem, if there's a serious ill that needs to be rectified, maybe we should do something about it. I guess all of this to say, this diatribe, initially starting on education and going to citizenship, is just people need to be involved. And I think the way that we do that is really instilling in them young that you have an obligation to participate, to do what is right, to actively show up for you, your family, your loved ones, and the community you find yourselves in. Make everything that you come in contact with more fulfilled than if it had not. Try to be a blessing to other people than a drain. This is not to imply that I'm thinking, oh, everyone's a drain, or this person or that person. These are more general principles I'm outlining. I think more people ought to ask the question. Because frankly, I'm not faulting anybody for not participating. Only the people who know they ought to participate and then don't. Many people nowadays in my age bracket, they don't even know that that's something they ought to be doing. They don't even ask the question, how can I help? Many people are struggling and just sort of drifting along. In fact, I used to be one of them. I'm grateful for the grace of God that I have found a purpose, I found a direction, I found a calling, the Brewster Call, to show up for my community, to be there for my friends, my family, and to build a larger coalition of people who feel the same way. And encourage and uplift them to do the same things and multiply that outward, to be a ripple effect. I implore each and every one of you to consider what it means to be a good citizen and how to show up. And on the education that I started off this episode, that doesn't have to be a formal schooling environment. I talk about civic schools as this third lane, but also just be willing to share what you know. Maybe you have a particular fun fact or a particular skill set. Pass those on to somebody else. Get them interested, involved, and engaged. Call them to something higher than just going along to get along. Things do not move unless we push them. Things do not change unless we stand up and do something about it. I, for one, am in the camp that showing up, getting out, and speaking, that is the character of a true citizen. Or at least, that's how it is for me. But for everything else, I encourage you to come up with your own answer. I submit to all of this to your humble consideration as thoughtful citizens. Be sure to spread the calling. Thank you very much, and God bless. Thanks for watching the Brewster Call, and a special thanks to Spencer Cable Access for helping me record this episode. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything to add, please reach out to thebrewstercall@gmail.com.